The Chiefs ending their 3-game second-half scoring drought with pizzazz, the razzmatazz, as they get past the Raiders, 31-17. And the game was tied at 14 at halftime. Kansas City fell behind 14-0 in the second quarter. They tied it by halftime and pulled away. Up, and away they went. After falling behind 14-0, Isaiah Pacheco rushing for 2 touchdowns in support of Patrick Mahomes. But the question, when you look at the amount of offense the Chiefs were able to put up against the Raiders, the question becomes this. Have Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City football team solved the missing link at the receiver position, putting up 30-plus points against the Raiders? The Raiders had the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL since Antonio Pierce took over. We mentioned that on the TV show over the weekend, a byproduct of having played the Giants and the Jets. So to answer that question, I'm shaking my head. No. I've got Johnson & Johnson, time capsule, and charitable donations. And we're going to combine all of these things together, and we are going to make a coffee pot is what we're going to make. Now, I don't need a coffee pot. I don't drink coffee. But you might need a coffee pot. A lot cheaper than going to those big coffee stores where they charge you $8 a coffee. So, first of all, this was a feel-good for he's a jolly good fellow kind of a day for Kansas City. It was. I watched this game, and they spotted the Raiders a 14-0 lead, giving the false illusion that Vegas was going to be in the game until the very end. But the Raider offense ran out of gas. They had none. The Chiefs have a good defensive team. There were plays to be made by the Raiders that were not made. But in the end, 14-0, Raiders had the lead, and it was a psych. Just kidding. Kansas City played error-free football in this game. When you look at the receivers individually, though, you look at this and you say, well, now the Chiefs have figured things out at the receiver position. People are saying that because of one guy, Rashee Rice, and his big performance here. But I look at the Chiefs wide receiver room, and I say this is a Johnson & Johnson special. Now, I'm not sure whether it's the Hello Kitty or whether it is the Captain America Band-Aid. I'm not sure which one, but this is a Band-Aid situation is what this is. Rashee Rice had 8 catches and 107 yards, both career highs as a rookie for the Chiefs, and he did have a touchdown. He was the breakout star of the game, Bafo Sacco. But one game does not mean that you have arrived. I learned that long ago. Do not be fooled. Do not be fooled by this. Now, he played well, and if he can play like this consistently, then we can revisit this. But at this moment, I am not going to be a prisoner of the moment. Thank you very much. I've learned my lesson to say that they've got something. Now, they have to find something. Otherwise, they're going to be an early exit out of the postseason. But Rashee Rice, can he play at a high level against elite teams in the NFL? The Raiders are not an elite team. They're not. Career high catches, yards. He hasn't played that many games in the NFL. Outside of Rice, here's another reason to be skeptical. Outside of Rashee Rice, the second and third leading pass catchers for the Chiefs were Travis Kelce, not a wide receiver, tight end, and Isaiah Pacheco. Last I checked, not a wide receiver, a scat back. That's it. So you had one guy. Now, one guy's better than no guys, but we got to see more. And the Raider defense was so lax in this game that we learned hours after the game, reports circulating here in the overnight, that Marcus Peters is about to be fired because he was taking plays off against Kansas City. And Antonio Pierce is like, you got to get out of here. You're benched. You're such a bum. Get off my team. All right, now, turning the page. Speaking of the Raiders coach, how are things working out for Antonio Pierce with the Raiders? We're now 4 games into the Antonio Pierce experience. You got the 2 games with the New York teams, the Miami game, and now a game against Kansas City. So The record indicates 2-2. That's the record after 4 games. That's average. So overall, to answer the question, how are things looking for Antonio Pierce? This was a demerit. Now, we are pulling for Antonio Pierce. It's a small world after, not like the Disney ride where there was some creepster. We'll talk more about that later, apparently, walking around naked at It's a Small World. But Vegas, they jumped out 14-0 lead. You're at home. You got a 14-0 lead. They looked good. It was the false start by the Raiders. Because once the Chiefs settled in, this was a time capsule, and not a good time capsule for Antonio Pierce. It was reminiscent of the Josh McDummy era. Josh McDaniels, where the Raiders blew double-digit leads on a regular basis in comparison to what they had done in the years prior, and you tossed this game into a smoker. And it was a vintage, get charbroiled performance by the Raider defense there as they vanished into thin air. And Aiden O'Connell, he's proving to everyone he ain't the guy. Now, you didn't think he was the guy, but he had the opportunity to be the guy. And yet people will look at the box score and say, well, he averaged 7.5 yards per pass. He had good numbers. Almost all of the damage was done early in the game. In the second half, Aiden O'Connell had a passer rating of 66.6, which is the sign of the devil, and which is appropriate in Sin City. But averaged 5.5 yards per attempt. Was a futile quarterback in the second half of that game for the Raiders, and this continues to be the model. It continues to be a model. Aiden O'Connell will come out, have a stretch where he looks pretty good early in a game, and then eventually the wheels come off. The wheels go round and round and round and round until they fall off the car. All right, final thought. We head to Denver. We move from Vegas to Colorado, where the Broncos added not 1, not 2, but 3 more fumble recoveries in their game over the Browns, 29-12. A victory for the Denver football team. The Broncos doing things they have not done since the 1980s defensively. The same team that gave up a 70-burger to the Miami Dolphins earlier this season, the Broncos now, with those 3 fumble recoveries in this game, now have 15 takeaways. 15 takeaways in their last 4 games. That is the greatest stretch the Broncos have had since 1989. Before social media. The internet was archaic in 1989. And yet, that's the last time the Broncos had a stretch like this. Now, Sean Payton's Denver football team, the hottest team in pro football, they've now won 5 straight games. They are above 500 at 6-5 on the season. Denver is in the 9th spot in the AFC. Top 7 get in, so they're not a playoff team. They have the same record as the Colts and the Texans. The Colts are the playoff team, but they have the same record, so there's still a bunch of games to be played. Russell Wilson, all that nonsense. We talked about this on the TV show over the weekend, and the question was, does the media owe Russell Wilson an apology because he's played so well? Well, he didn't play well in this game. And he's getting paid $40 million a year. I don't think he deserves an apology. 130-something yards passing in this game, and just not a reason. Not a reason the Broncos won the game. It was sloppy. The question here, can this Sean Payton recipe keep working for the Broncos? And the answer is this. It has to keep working because it's the only way they can win. Right? They have not shown that they have the intestinal fortitude, the Broncos, to win the old-fashioned way where the other team just doesn't hand you the game. Right? Now, it's working. I don't know whether Sean Payton bought a voodoo doll on Amazon or something like that. I don't know what's going on. I have never seen anything like this in recent years where one team just stands there and the other – it's not like most of these turnovers are not forced. It's just sloppy football by the opposition. And it's working. It's not like all of a sudden the Broncos became this hard-hitting, lights-out defense. It's not. Now, they played better. But not this good. And so again, the question, we asked the question, Sean Payton, can this recipe keep working? It has to, because the Broncos have not shown that they can win a game straight up where both teams play even. Nobody has a bunch of turnovers and just hands the game away. But the generosity that has been given to Denver, the charitable donations from the opposition, the Cleveland Browns did their part. They also sent a bunch of guys to the injury tent, which helps out the Rams, who play the Browns next week. So that's a net positive for the Rams, because the Browns, Myles Garrett was in a cast, not a cast, he had his arm was in a sling after the game. So Bronco country, let's ride, as Russell Wilson likes to say. There you go. But there'll be some roadblocks here. But the Broncos, considering there were conversations about Sean Payton going back to television because he had lost his mojo as coach of the Broncos, I guess he found his mojo. He must have smoked some of that good weed up there in the Rocky Mountains, and he found his mojo.